they have to offer statistics to support the current and prospective owner, the borrowers and other creditors to measure the reporting entities worth. Next, I will pass to Maida, chapter 2.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and good evening, everyone. So now I will be presenting chapter 2, which is the qualitative characteristics of useful information. Okay, in this chapter, we will be discussing on the qualitative characteristics of useful financial information, as well as to identify the types of useful information to the existing and potential investors, lenders, and other creditors. Other than that, it is also for making decisions about the reporting entity on the basis of information in its financial report or financial information. Okay, there are two parts of the qualitative characteristics of useful information, which include the fundamental qualitative characteristics and also enhancing qualitative characteristics. If financial information is to be useful, it must be relevant and faithfully represent what it purports to represent. And the usefulness of financial information is enhanced if it is comparable, verifiable, timely, and understandable. We will go through the first part, which is fundamental qualitative characteristics. In this fundamental qualitative characteristics, there are two, which is relevance and faithful representation. In relevance, it means that capable of making a difference in the decisions made by users. And even if some users choose not to take advantage of it or are already aware of it from other sources. And then in terms of its materiality, information is material if omitting it or misstating it could influence decisions to the financial reports made on the basis. The second one is faithful representation. Financial information must faithfully represent the substance of the phenomena that it purports to represent. The substance of an economic phenomenon and its legal form are the same in the most circumstances. And then to be a perfectly faithful representation, a depiction would have three characteristics, which are complete, neutral, and free from error. Second part is enhancing qualitative characteristics. This helps to determine which of two ways should be used to depict a phenomenon if both are considered to provide equally relevant information and equally faithfully representation of that phenomenon. So in these characteristics, there are comparability, verifiability, timeliness, and also understandability. For the first characteristics, which is comparability, it enables users to identify and understand similarities in and differences among items. And the second one is verifiability. It helps to assure users that information faithfully represents the economic phenomena it purports to represent. Timeliness. It is mean that having information available to decision makers in time to be capable of influencing their decisions. And the last one is understandability, which is classifying, characterizing, and presenting information clearly and concisely makes it understandable. Okay, the next one is the cost constraint on useful financial reporting. So cost is a pervasive constraint on the information that can be provided by financial reporting. Reporting financial information imposes costs, and it is important that those costs are justified by the benefits of reporting that information. And there are several types of costs and benefits to consider. The last part is the past year question. So it is from UITM, June 2019, question 5B. Two major qualitative characteristics of financial information in the International Accounting Standards Board, IASB framework, are reliability and relevance. Within reliability, the main component is faithful representation. So discuss the meaning of relevance and faithful representation. So I've just mentioned about the meaning of relevance and faithful from the previous slides. Okay, so the answer For the relevance, it means that financial information is capable of making a difference in the decisions made by users. Information may be capable of making a difference in a decision even if some users choose not to take advantage of it or already aware of it from other sources. And financial information is capable of making a difference in decisions if it has predictive value, confirmatory value, or both. So for this question, it is 5 marks. So for the first point, I put 3 points, which is can be represent 3 marks. And then for the faithful presentation, it defines that the financial reports must represent economic phenomena in words and numbers. In fact, financial information must not only represent relevant phenomena, but it must also faithfully represent the substance of the phenomena that it purports to represent. And in many circumstances, the substance of an economic phenomenon and its legal form are the same. If they are not the same, providing information only about the legal form would not faithfully represent the economic phenomenon. So I think that's all from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mar and Dini. Dini, ya. Mar and Dini. Okay, you boleh share you punya slide dekat sini. You punya slide dekat sini. Okay, untuk yang the first topic tu, masih buka saya punya. Mar boleh share you punya slide tanpa video. Kita go to. Ini semua yang the basic one ya, chapter 1, chapter 2. Kat sini dia bagi kenapa you kena prepare account, kenapa you kena bagi financial information kepada siapa, dan apa kegunaan, apa kepentingan semua dekat sini. So hopefully you understand. Kita guna accrual basis, cash basis, lepas tu economic resources yang selalu kita sebut-sebut, selalu kita ulang-ulang tu semua. Hopefully you faham. Okay, cuba kita go to satu slide ni. Okay, next. Okay, this one objective to provide financial information about the reporting entity, maksudnya to provide information about the company. That is useful in making decision about providing resources to the entity. Maksudnya to provide information kepada for example, investor, lender and creditor. Contohnya. Macam biasalah kita buat account, kita bagi kat siapa. Okay, next. Ini boleh masuk sekali dalam management accounting juga lah. Ni dia cerita pasal limitation of general purpose. Okay, ni check, do not and can, apa yang do and don'ts untuk information ni you boleh provide kepada siapa, kepada what kind of information that you can share to the external, and then apa yang information that you cannot share dengan external. Okay, next. Okay, to provide information about financial position, about the entity economic resources, Kalau you confuse entity economic resources tu, you boleh check entity resources. Economic tu dia punya term dalam kamus kita. The claims against the reporting entity. Okay, next. Saya dah tahu ada tak yang pelik-pelik dekat dengan you punya slide ni. Definition economic resources dengan claim. Okay, liability, asset. Okay, next. To help user to assess information about company handling its liability. User access management stewardship. Ni okey lah. Okay, next. Tak yang pelik-pelik kat sini. Kita go through satu round. Cepat-cepat. Sebelum kawan you tanya slide mana yang tak faham, slide yang tak faham, biasa tengok dulu. Okay, next. Changes in economic resources and claim. Okay, next. So kita guna accrual accounting basis ya. Past cash flow information, dia punya This one, why we need to prepare cash flow, for what purpose, what is inside the cash flow information is beneficial to who, how kita boleh buat analysis based on cash flow, kan, ditulis to help users understand a reporting entity operation, evaluate its financial and investing activities. Buat cash flow ada 3, operation, financing and investing. Dipecah kepada 3. Cash flow ada direct and indirect. Nanti yang tu nanti you belajar dalam file lain lah, sebabnya ni dia nak cerita lah. Okay, sebelum sepatutnya you dah settle you punya file-file yang calculation tu. Sekarang ni baru dia bagi tahu you cash flow tu you buat tu, information dalam cash flow tu macam mana kita nak buat analysis. Siapa yang nak tengok? Part operation, part financing, part investing. Ini teori dia lah. Okay, next. Ini question lah. Ini investor, lender ni normal lah. Kenapa dia nak tengok? Okay, next. Okay. Macam biasa yang saya inform, dia kena ada header, dia punya point dia apa, and then explanation, 3 hingga 5 baris sahaja. Satu key point 0.5 markah, 3 hingga 5 baris jawapan 1.5 markah. So satu point 2 markah. Point dengan dia punya elaboration dia 2 markah. So tengok tadi you ada berapa markah? 5 kan? 5 markah kan tadi tu? Asal 5. So 5 ni mungkin kalau you nak buat simple point dia ada 5 point. So bila 5 markah, 5 point tu maksudnya satu key point, mungkin 2 baris explanation ni. Sebab ada 1 markah kan. Ataupun you buat 3 key point. Kalau 2 tu mungkin 2 kan. Jadi mungkin saya buat bagi 3 point. 3 point, dia punya key point dia kat situ. 1 explanation 3 baris, key point explanation 3 baris, key point explanation 3 baris. So saya boleh bagi 2 markah. So markah maksimum 5, 3 point. Contohnya. Ataupun 5 point tapi short. 2 baris, 2 baris, 2 baris, 2 baris, 2 baris untuk 1 point. Sebab you takkan ingat semua benda. Sebab ni teori kan. Dia kena faham dan ingat key point dan ingat explanation. Explanation pun tak perlu panjang. 3 hingga 5 baris. 5 baris maksimum. Okey, jom. Lagi. Lepas tu highlight lah yang mana key point dalam jawapan you ni. Highlight, gariskan, boldkan, dia punya key dia tu. Sebab kita kadang kita tak boleh baca semua ni, kita nak tengok key point jadi. Contohnya dia merahkan ni, expectation for entity possible net cash inflow. Do not and cannot contain of the details. Do not means to display a reporting entity valuation. Ini tadi apa soalan tadi? Ini kepada investor. Apa soalan tadi? Kepada investor lender dengan borrower dengan apa ni? Creditor. Cuba check back balik soalan dia tadi. Okay, discuss whether general purpose financial reporting, discuss whether purpose of financial reporting is able to provide all information needed by existing potential investor, lender and other creditor. Contoh kat sini you boleh buat, okay, investor kenapa dia nak guna, lender kenapa, other creditor kenapa. So 3 lah, 3 point contohnya kan. So you punya jawapan tadi. Okay, mungkin yang pertama ni you nak cerita pasal stakeholder, kedua lender, ketiga creditor. Tu you kena baca. Jawapan senior tu you kena baca. takut senior pun sebab yang tu memang tak, yang tu memang slide yang belum dibaiki. Dan slide ni pun saya tak minta you all baiki. Maksud dia kadang lepas pas je. So next slide baru you baiki untuk next topic. Sama macam you punya sini jugalah. So saya tak ingat dah masa tu betul masa tak, tapi you boleh jadikan dia sebagai reference lah. Okay, next. Okay, ni you belajar masa foundation. Benda yang sama, nota yang sama, cuma ini you belajar based on yang betul punya teori. Yang dulu macam info-info yang simple-simple, yang ni inilah dia punya, you punya dictionary, dia punya dictionary untuk inilah untuk qualitative characteristic of useful financial information ni. You akan carry sampai you belajar next master ke apa ke, nanti dia akan still belajar lagi benda yang sama. Dia berulang. Okay, next. Okay, lagi. Ini semua kualitatif lah, ada relevant, ada faithful representation dan sebagainya. Tak saya punya slide. Okay. Relevant, faithful representation, lepas tu dia punya qualitative and nak enhance lagi, nak lebih enhance comparability, verifiability, timeliness, understandability. Dia ada 2 peringkat kan. Okay. Done. Okay, sebelum kawan you tanya, saya tanya dulu satu soalan lah, nak warm up kan. Okay, Mar dengan Dini, you did mention about the cost constraint on useful financial information, ya. The cost constraint, maksudnya kekangan keuangan, kekangan duit, kekangan this one in terms of financial punya cost lah. Maksudnya company terpaksa mengeluarkan duit untuk provide useful financial information kepada user, isi the internal ataupun external user. Okay, can you share with all of us today, currently at this moment, at this era kan, digital era ni, what kind of cost yang biasanya yang what kind of cost yang menyebabkan what kind of cost yang give constraint to the company when they want to deliver atau when they want to provide useful financial information ni kepada external user. Kalau dulu dia kata mungkin ada cost kan, cost tinggi lah sebab dia nak provide sana, nak provide sini. Kalau zaman-zaman sekarang ni semuanya di hujung jari, semuanya digital, semuanya teknologi, apa cost lagi yang kalau orang tanya kan, zaman sekarang ni dah canggih-canggih pun nak kena cost constraint juga ke bila nak provide useful financial information ni kepada external user? Cuba you discusskan. Based on sekarang punya latest teknologi lah, latest digital teknologi lah, digital era lah semua ni.
Maksudnya kan sekiranya dulu dia ada cost tu, sekarang bila dah ada perubahan zaman, dia dah tak ada kena pakai cost tu ke?
Maksudnya adakah company sekarang masih ada issue of cost whenever they want to provide useful financial information kepada external user? Soalan dia. Ada lagi tak masalah cost ni sekarang ni?
Kalau bagi saya lah, kalau macam dulu kan tak ada apa macam social media, tak ada macam orang tak didedahkan sangat dengan email apa semua kan. So maybe macam dia orang macam kena bukukan and then kena bagi dekat external user ke dia orang punya financial report tu, and then sekarang siapa-siapa boleh access benda tu dengan apa dalam internet ataupun dia orang punya homepage website dia orang lah. Kalau company-company besar. Macam tu ke sir?
Tapi kalau company
Okay,
yang
lagi.
buat ada Tapi ada certain company dia kena print out juga walaupun dia interact tapi tetap provide dia keluarkan juga jadi hitam putih. Kena ada kos juga ke sana.
Tak apa, kita discuss je.
Maksudnya kalau dia discussion melalui social media dalam era teknologi tinggi ni pun dia tetap perlukan dokumen. Maksudnya dia sendiri yang akan print out apa yang daripada lah. Maksudnya dia kena ada hitam putih juga, ada juga agreement apa semua tu. Ada juga cost dia. Saya tak tahu betul tak.
Okey, betul. Tak ada yang tak betul. Betul. Cuma markah dia kurang ke markah dia lebih je. Sama ada dapat satu markah ataupun dua markah. Okey. Itu mungkin soalan-soalan test kan. Maksudnya kalau zaman sekarang ni still ada cost constraint tak? Okey, kalau based on yang dia punya original conception framework ni yang saya faham dekat sini, dia kata bila kita nak provide useful tadi ni bukan topik digital era kan, ni topik yang asal dia tadi tu. Soalan saya ni yang zaman sekarang ni, soalan dalam dia punya conceptual framework yang asal tu dia kata bila kita nak provide yang relevant information, faithful representation, yang relevant semua tu kita perlu banyak kerja. Bila kita banyak kerja, itu yang cost dia naik tu. Contohnya finance department dia kena review dia punya financial information tu so that apa yang betul-betul dia nak bagi kepada external user tu itu sahaja yang dia bagi. Dia kena review one by one, maksudnya dia ada banyak stage. Contohnya saya cakap finance executive prepare full set of account, assistant manager review full set of account tu, audited report ke draft audited report itu semua manager review lagi sekali last round. Lepas tu buat analisis pula dalam bentuk yang bentuk dalam bentuk annual report ke dalam bentuk quarterly report ke, contohnya ni company berhad lah. Lepas tu kita saring dulu information tu, boleh ke tidak boleh. Lepas tu pergi ke investor relation department. Investor relation department ni buat dalam bentuk slide presentation. So slide presentation ni nak tengok yang ni boleh tak share, yang ni tak. Contohnya macam di RBI Haikon Berhad dulu masa saya kerja investor relation department di RBI Haikon Berhad HQ, bila kita dapat slide tu nak kena tanya Proton, boleh tak call Proton boleh tak bagi provide information ni kepada shareholder, external shareholder ataupun investor, boleh tak data ni nak kena call, nak kena confirmkan betul tak ayat ni bila kita nak cerita ke orang. Sebab nanti bila sampai kat orang luar, sampai dekat investment bank, analyst dekat investment bank, dia akan mengkaji ayat yang kita buat tu. So kita kena berhati-hati dengan bila kita nak sebarkan information tu. So once kita pop up dekat RBI company website tu, terus investor terus finance analyst daripada investment bank tu dia akan ambil kita punya data report kita tu dan dia akan buat analisis. So dari satu analisis, kedua analisis, tiga analisis, empat analisis, lima analisis. Saya cuma buka kat sini sebab saya sampai sekarang pun banyak tapi saya takut saya dah delete ya. Saya share satu. Kalau masih ada ya. Saya takut dah tak ada. Saya dah baca. Biasa Maybank. Okey. Ni contoh saya bagi. Yang ni saya tak boleh buka. Sebagai ni. Ya, saya share slide saya. Slide. Okey. Kalau you all tengok dekat sini contoh boleh nampak saya punya ni. Boleh nampak ya?
Boleh, sir.
Okay, every quarter, contoh di RB Highcom every quarter di RB Highcom punya Investor Relation Department ni, dia akan Investor Relation Division ni, setiap quarter dia akan keluarkan dia punya ni atas ni, find out more. Dia punya presentation deck, quarterly result announcement So dia akan keluarkan yang ni. So ni dia akan keluarkan yang contoh macam ni lah, ni yang latest ni. Okay, fuck you. Ini latest. So bila dia keluarkan info ni ada beberapa layers. CFO, DRB kena approve, Puan Aminah kena approve, Mr. Nader kena approve. Slide ni sahaja. Untuk memastikan slide ni tak ada information yang akan menjerat diri sendiri. Okay, disclaimer. Nampak simple tapi bila sampai kat tangan investor, tangan kat analis dekat investment bank tu, dia akan mengkaji semua ayat-ayat yang kita tulis dalam ni. The group ni biasalah kan. Contohnya ni, dia tulis ni, saya besarkan sikit. Excluding one-off item of 1.28 billion derived from divestment of property asset in FY 2020. The group's operating revenue for the financial year ended 31st December is higher by 0.5 billion. So nanti audit analyst akan tanya divestment of property ni apa pula. So kita kena provide information lagi. Dia akan jadi never ending punya information. Bila analis tanya je, kita kena jawab. Sebab dia memang analis. Dia nak buat analisis dia semua tu. Macam proton, kalau cerita pasal proton ni, ada tak yang macam ada certain yang macam PNC ke? Okay, macam ni contoh DevTech. DevTech successfully delivered a total of 233 unit of AV8 as at 31st December. So ada berapa lagi yang tak successful? Dia akan tanya. Apa yang pending? Dekat mana yang pending? Kat mana yang start? Kat situ start. Kenapa tak cukup? Dia akan tanyalah auditor. Poster pun sama juga. Kenapa post Malaysia lower lah, higher lah, increase banking, bank muamalat itu ini. Semua dia akan tanya. So end up, dia akan keluar. Contohnya public bank. Public investment bank. Ni investment bank akan keluarkan report lah. Dia punya report sendiri. So dia akan baca dan dia akan buat analisis. Dia akan outperform ke, apa neutral ke, apa semua dia akan cerita kat sini. Biasanya ada dalam PDF, mesti tengok. Better year ahead dia tulis sini. Ni maksudnya jangan salah bagi info. Bila salah bagi info, diorang akan buat analisis dan analisis tu semua investor, maksudnya orang yang nak beli saham tu dia akan tengok info-info ni daripada Hong Leong Investment Bank Research. Kita tahu. Ni baru lagi ni. Dulu inilah kerja saya membaca benda ni. Ni you kena baca ni. Contoh saya besarkan ni. Inilah kerja saya dulu. membaca benda-benda yang analis tulis tentang. So bila you keluarkan you punya slide presentation tadi, so analis pun akan tulis lah. Ini nama dia Daniel Wong. Tak ingat dah dia tak Daniel Wong. Zaman saya ke tidak ke tak tahu. So dia akan tulis lah. Expecting a stronger 2022. The RBI reported profit after tax minority interest to 16.6 million, to above expectation, quarter on quarter, year on year, year to date automotive, post Malaysia forecast unchanged. Dia akan buat analisis dia semua. Dia beri info kita. So that's why banyak cost akan incurred sebab bila kita nak bagi useful financial information tu kepada investor tu kena betul-betul useful. Kalau salah nanti kita termakan dia sendiri. Ini baru satu ni, dia ada banyak, dia ada 7-8, kalau dulu ada banyak investment bank akan minta kita punya data. Ada M-Bank, ada Hong Leong, ada Public Bank, ada Kenanga Investment. Ada 5 Public Bank, Kenanga, ada 5-6 company. So dia akan cover di RBI.com punya berita. So kalau you suka buat benda ni tadi tu, you masuk investment bank. Kalau you suka slide presentation ni, you masuk investor relation department. Macam ni kan, you suka buat analisis pasal company kan. Macam ni analisis ni, ni investment bank punya orang. Analis akan buat daripada kita punya presentation yang kita bagi. So every quarter saya akan berjumpa dengan orang-orang ni semualah. And then ada masa kita akan buat set meeting. Dia orang akan datang di RBI.com Berhad, dia akan datang ke RBI.com Berhad. Bawa dia orang punya potential investor untuk beli saham di RBI.com tu. Kadang-kadang dia bawa tabung haji, kadang-kadang dia bawa QOP, kadang-kadang dia bawa EPF, dia bawa tabung haji, EPF. Yang besar-besar kan, untuk invest dalam untuk beli saham di RBI.com dekat pasaran, dekat open market tu. Dan ni kita akan share lah info-info ni. So info ni kadang-kadang cost dia tinggi. So CFO kena tengok, CEO kena tengok, GMD kena tengok. Lepas tu yang tukang buat tu, yang tukang review tu dan sebagainya. So you kena explore benda-benda macam ni. Kerja you. Ini semua orang account ni. Tapi biasanya kalau yang macam ni, dia akan cari yang ni, apa? Actuarial science kan orang. Actuarial science kan dia more to analysis kan. Ni kerja-kerja orang-orang actuarial science. Tapi orang-orang accounting pun boleh. Tapi you kena kerja dekat Hong Kong Investment Bank. Semua yang investment bank. Bukan bank yang biasa tu. Sebab ni memang investment kan. So dia nak invest, pergi kat bank. So Daniel Wong ni akan buat analisis untuk you. Sebab dia pun maksudnya investor guna platform Hong Leong untuk beli saham. So Hong Leong pun akan dapat juga dia punya keuntungan lah bila investor tu daripada dia. Ini cara-cara orang-orang ni lah. The real world punya ni, bahagian-bahagian yang benda-benda macam ni lah. Okay, sambung. Jadi lama pula dah. Itu soalan saya tadi. So nak provide, maksudnya contohnya kan, nak CGPA tinggi, kena ada you kena sacrifice. Macam tu kan, nak provide useful financial information, banyak cost akan incur. You kena take time to review. Mungkin ada tambahan staff, mungkin bos you kena check. So cost dia meningkat lah kat situ. Okay, itu contohnya. Jom sambung. Panjang pula cerita dia tadi. Itu real case, dunia sebenar. Okay, sambil Mar boleh share balik slide tu. Okay, ada soalan? Daripada ni? Any question from the floor? Satu markah, satu bonus mark. Satu markah, satu soalan.
Saya nak tanya.
Okay, nama?
Nur Aisyah binti Yusfandi. In Malay boleh ke tu?
Mix je as long as, sebab ni teori tau. Kadang-kadang kita tak expert in English. Sebab kita orang Malaysia.
Okay,
Tapi jangan lupa dunia di luar sana semua menggunakan bahasa Inggeris untuk private company. Tak ada bahasa Melayu semua tak ada.
Thank
5%, 10% sahaja. Tapi untuk pemahaman ni boleh mix. It can be any language as long as you understand and you faham teori.
Okay. So macam nak tanya pasal cost constraint juga. Jadi saya search antara cost constraint tu macam materiality, timeliness and so on lah. So macam ada tak example yang memang spesifik on cost constraint dalam financial reporting ni?
Soalan dia sebab cost constraint punya soalan ni ialah bila you nak provide information kepada orang, apa cost-cost yang terlibat?
Contoh.
Soalan dia contohnya. Okey.
Mm-mm.
Ada Mar dengan Dini? Mar, ada jawapan?
Cost constraint tu maksudnya contoh yang spesifik ke nak yang general?
Nak contoh spesifik.
Contoh.
Hmm.
Okey, contohnya satu contohnya DRB Highcom kena cari seorang staff baru, contohlah kena cari seorang staff yang expert dalam analysis of data, analysis of information. So dia boleh provide analysis yang betul-betul mantap. Sebelum bagi investor, sebelum bagi contohlah macam saya dulu, sebelum saya bagi dekat analyst daripada investment bank tu, slide tu you kena betul-betul dengan English yang betul, dengan word yang betul. So you perlukan orang yang pakar. Satu manpower. Manpower ni lebih spesifik ialah analyst. Maksudnya DRB Highcom tu you kena ada analyst you sendiri. Macam saya dulu saya buat benda tu. Kita saya jadi analis, bukanlah tak level tinggi, maksudnya adalah department tu dan adalah kerja analis tu nak buat, internal analyst kita. Dia kena betul-betul yang orang yang betul-betul yang capable lah untuk bila analis call dia you boleh jawab. So kat situ sebab everything English kan, so you kena betul-betul expert English ataupun dia boleh faham apa yang you nak cerita, walaupun English you tak okay, dia faham and then you boleh deliver information tu dengan betul. So satu ialah manpower. Di HQ kena ada orang yang betul-betul jaga bagi bahagian financial information tu. Sebelum bagi ke orang luar, external user tu, you kena saring dulu. So satu ialah cost manpower. You kena provide. Okay, lain. Satu, second, time. Time ya. Kalau ada banyak stage tu, executive buat, assistant manager check, manager review, lepas tu CFO review, lepas tu GMD review. Dia jadi 5 stage. Bila 5 stage, time consuming. Bila time consuming akan increase cost lah. 2. Contohlah. So 2 contoh. Ada lagi tak yang Mar dengan Dini boleh tambah contoh-contoh? Satu lagi unexpected cost lah. So bila you salah bagi jawab soalan, you salah bagi information, lepas tu dia jadi berpanjangan. Tak habis dekat situ. Lepas tu bursa pula masuk campur. Sebab you salah bagi info pasal proton. Lepas tu analis pula, tiba-tiba tabung haji call pula kita punya ni. Kita punya shareholder, tiba-tiba swap call pula, jadi panjang. So cost lah tu. Dia akan menyebabkan cost yang tinggi.
Okay, faham.
Okay. Pernah jugalah kadang-kadang saya bagi info yang tak tepat. Lepas tu esoknya dia habis kena tibai dengan bos. Kenapa you bagi info macam ni. Bos susah juga. Okay. Dunia sangat mencabar di luar. Sambung. Okay, Aisyah, satu markah lagi yang lain. Okay, ada lagi soalan tak dia? Okay, kalau tak ada, thank you Mar. You punya score Okay, hari tu yang grup pertama tu 8/10. You punya slide presentation ni macam still youth lagi, tapi tak ada problem. Yang hari tu macam dah mature dah punya slide presentation. Ini still youth punya level lagi lah. So tak ada problem. Cuma satu bila penggunaan ni. Macam tadi ada macam tak nampak tulisan dia warna-warna orange sikit tu. Itu je kena improve. So markah dia taklah penuh sangat lah. Macam ni you copy kan daripada slide-slide orang lain ni. Yang bawah ni. Saya tak pastilah sebab saya tak tengok lagi contoh. Nampak macam, saya tak pasti, nampak macam ambil ni daripada internet, copy paste terus kan, contohnya lah. Okay. So you punya presentation ni still sama dengan last apa yang background. Still 4 dan juga 4, 8 markah. So 8/10 you punya markah hari ini. Still sama dengan Asrul dengan Aisyah Musfandi. 4. Okay. So ready untuk next, untuk dapat lebih lagi markah. So kita akan make the best markah. Okay, thank you both of you. Okay, kita akan pergi kat next presentation.
Kat mana ni?
Jom. Topic number 5, subtopic number 5 and 6. Kalau you nak share you punya slide untuk kawan-kawan you, boleh masuk dalam WhatsApp juga, you punya slide. So dan kawan-kawan you boleh review slide you juga lah. Tengok. Okay, sambung. Cantik slide. Hana Najiha, Siti Syakira Zafira.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good night to all of you. So, salam Maladies ucapkan. So, today, ini saya, Siti Syakira Zafira, Betografi dan my partner, Najah binti Hamran akan membentangkan chapter 5 and 6, Recognition and Derecognition, and chapter 6, Measurement. So, I pass the floor to the next presenter.
Saya bila nampak Siti Syakira Zafira ni, saya rasa macam dia macam Puteri Balkis pula daripada jauh. Puteri Balkis, ingat tak Puteri Balkis?
Kenal pelakon.
Muka dia macam Puteri Balkis tu.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. So my name is Hana Najiha binti Hamran. So today I would like to present topic 5 about recognition and derecognition. Okay, so basically recognition is hello while derecognition is goodbye. But of course the conceptual framework has its own way with words and is therefore define recognition as follows. So this is the definition of the recognition. Okay, so the recognition is process of capturing for inclusion in the statement of financial position or the statement of financial performance an item that meets the definition of one of those elements of financial statements, such as an asset, a liability, equity, income, or expenses. So recognition involves depicting the item in one of those statements, either alone or in aggregation with other items in words and by a monetary amount, and including that amount in one or more totals in the statements. So the amount at which an asset, a liability, or equity is recognized in the statement of financial position is referred to as its carrying amount. So it's a little bit long, so we're gonna make it short. Okay, next slide.
Hana, cuba you tengok slide pertama you. Record ke ni ke tak ni? Tak record kan?
Tak record lah, kena buat
tak apa. Bukan. Saya ingatkan you record. Okay. Cuba you tengok dia punya, cuba you baca satu-satu dia punya contoh ya. Ini sebab kamus kan. Kalau you nak biasa recognition tu biasa punya. Cuba you baca contoh satu ni. Contoh ayat baca macam seorang lawyer. Ni baru you nampak. Bila baca kamus accounting ni, dia akan cerita satu-satu apa maksud recognition tu. Cuba you baca slow-slow, saya nak tengok.
Okay. So the process of capturing for inclusion in the statement of financial position or the statement of financial performance an item that meets the definition of one of those elements of financial statements, such as an asset, a liability, equity, income, or expenses. So recognition involves depicting the item in one of those statements, either alone or in aggregation with other items, in words and by a monetary amount, and including the amount in one or more totals in that statement. So the amount at which an asset, a liability, or equity is recognized in the statements of financial position is referred to as the amount.
Okay. So you nampak dia punya kalau ayat kamus dia jadi recognition involve depicting the item in one of those statement either alone or in aggregation with other item in word or by monetary amount including amount. Dia jadi ayat macam tu. Ayat simple dia lah. Bila you nak recognize asset, you recognize asset tu. Macam mana you recognize kan ada tiga tu. Ada right, ada economy benefit, ada you punya control. Jadi bila ayat kamus tu dia jadi macam ni lah. You tak akan hafal punya ayat kamus ni. Dan setelah you understand buat 3 baris hingga 5 baris you punya based on you punya understanding pun dah settle. Tak perlu hafal. Yang penting fahamkan sahaja dia untuk. Okay,
Alright, next slide. Because it's too long, so we make it short. So recognition is including an element of the statement of financial position or statement of financial performance when it so qualifies. So next. So when does it qualify? So it qualifies when it meets the definition of the particular element, such as the definition of an asset, but it provides users with fundamentally useful information. So when do you say the fundamentally is useful? So the answer you can refer to the chapter 3, that relevance and faithful representation. All right, next. Okay, so but what if it has met the definition of an element, but it doesn't necessarily provide relevant information? So for example, it meets the definition of an asset, but it is uncertain the asset existent, where the probability of an economic influence that law, what will happen next? So, well, the asset will not be recognized in the face of the financial statements. Selalunya these unrecognized assets and liabilities akan ditempatkan in the notes of financial statements. But what will happen if the faithful representation is the one that affected? So for example, an item meet the definition of an asset as it has is considered relevant. But bila kita ragu-ragu, the asset can be faithfully represented. So kita kena selalu ingat sebelum the item can be recognized, it has to be measured. So the item with very high measurement, uncertainty cannot be recognized. But it will be the case if it is close to impossible to come up with a reasonable estimate. Alright, so next. Okay, so anyway, a long time ago when accounting was fun and simple, they will know about the financial information interconnected. The financial statements are interconnected. The framework points out that the financial statements are linked because the recognition of one item requires the recognition of one or more other items. So it sounds complicated. So to state it this way, so I will list it over here, the cash flow statements, the statement of financial performance, statement of changes in equity, statement of financial position, and note to the financial statements. Okay, next. So if you think about the double entry system, you will think about the debit and credit. The interconnectedness among the financial statements can be demonstrated by looking at the movement in the net assets or equity for a period. So for the first one is the net asset beginning. So equity at the beginning of the period, and the fourth one is net asset ending. So have your equity of the end of the period. So a lot of things can happen during this period, such as number 2, profit or loss. So for example, for the entity could have enjoyed the profit and also can suffer for the loss. So for number 3 is contribution and distribution. So they also have been contribution made by and also then distribution made to equity holders. So equity is reflected in the statement financial position. All right, next. Okay, so why recognition is important? It is important because to recognizing assets, liabilities, equity, income and expenses depicts an entity's financial position and financial performance in structure summaries. Okay, so pentinglah untuk kita mengenal pasti aset, liability, equity, pendapatan dan perbelanjaan untuk kita tahu kedudukan kewangan entity and prestasi kewangan dalam structure summaries. Okay, next. So, we all done about the hello part. So we're gonna begin about the goodbye parts. So derecognition is the goodbye. So I will define the derecognition. It is the removal of all or part of a recognized asset or liability from entity statement of financial position. Okay, next. Okay, so accounting normally, okay, so when do we derecognize? So it no longer meet the definition of the specific element. So accounting normally says goodbye to an element of the financial statements when the element of the financial statement is no longer meets the definition of the element. For example, you have lost control your asset because you have sold it. So you already paid your liability plus you no longer have a present obligation. So then you have to do recognize. However, at times we do recognize only a portion of the element. Okay, such as we have only paid a portion of our long-term debt. So the portion that we have to recognize is called the transferring component. So while the portion that is left in the financial statement is called the retained component. Okay, so I think that is the end of the hellos and goodbye for topic 5. Thank you. So I will move to Siti Shakira.
Okay. So here is my part. My part is a chapter 6 measurement. So first of all, what is measurement? Measurement is the process of quantifying in monetary terms information about an entity's asset, liabilities, equity, and income and expenses. So it can be categorized into two, where it contains historical cost and current value. So what is historical cost? Historical cost have two. It is non-financial and financial, where it provides monetary information about assets, liabilities, and related income and expenses based at least in part on the price of the transaction or the event that resulted in them. So here is a table where the non-financial assets is where the cost incurred, including transaction cost, consumption, impairment, does not reflect changes caused by other factors. Then we have a non-financial liabilities, the consideration received, net of the transaction cost, the interest, fulfillment, onerous. Onerous is a time-consuming. Then it also does not reflect changes caused by the other factors. Then we have the financial assets, where the consideration given, including transaction costs, interest, changes in estimates of cash flows, including impairment, receipts, and it also does not reflect changes in prices caused by others. So there we go, financial liabilities. Also the same with the non-financial liabilities, where the consideration received, net of the transaction cost, interest, and it's different as they have changes in estimates of cash flows, including impairment, payments, and it also does not reflect the changes in price by others. So here we go to the current value. So what is current value? Current value is this is the information provided for the current value, as provide monetary information about assets, liabilities, and related income and expenses, using information updated to reflect conditions at the measurement date, where the measurement based on market participants assumption, that is fair value. Also the entity specific assumption is value in use, or we can call fulfillment value or and fulfillment value, because fulfillment value is using for liabilities. So we also have a current cost. Okay. So as the information provided for the historical cost, it can be obtained from the price of the transaction or other, as the asset and liabilities at the historical cost, where a balance is needed between giving entities the flexibility to provide relevant information that fully represent the entity's asset, liabilities, equity, and current expenses. So, the historical cost, this accounting treatment is remain unchanged, but there we have a fair value that we use the entity assumption where the asset and liabilities at fair value may have predictive value or confirmatory value. So there are also value in use and fulfillment value where the present value of the estimated cash flows from the use of an asset and its ultimate disposal. We also can ask for the fulfillment value we can get from the present value of the estimated cash flows needed. So as for the current cost, the information provided, we need to take the asset and liabilities measured at the current cost as the cost at which an equivalent asset could be acquired, because some of them will be created at the measurement date or some of them will be created at the consideration that would be received for incurring or taking on equivalent liability. So there are also factors to consider selecting the measurement base, where it is necessary to consider the nature of the information that the measurement basis will produce in both the statement of financial position and statements of financial performance. It has about 5, but I give to you 3. The main is the relevance of information, the factual representation that have been presented by the group Kak Mar and also Kak Dini, and also the understandability and cost constraint, also the same with the previous group. So what if we have more than one relevant measurement basis? So we need to obtain the information provided using single measurement basis, where we will disclose other measurement basis in the notes of financial statements. It also, if we have we have more than one relevant measurement basis, we could also use the current value measurement and different measurement basis, where it's include the measurement of equity, where the measurement equity is the measurement of the total carrying amount in the equity and the cash flow based measurement techniques. So that's all from me. So next we will be presenting about the past year paper, chapter 5 and 6. The chapter 5, recognition and recognition from the paper April 2000, UITM. And also chapter 6, measurement, June and December 2019, UITM. So I will pass the floor to the next presenter.
Okay, so for the question 5. Okay, so the question is a chemical manufacturer acquired plant enhancement for safety and environmental reasons. The acquisition of such asset does not directly increase the future economic benefit of the existing plants. Hence, it's not qualified for recognition as asset under IAS 16 that has been revised. So discuss how the cost of such an asset could be accounted. Okay, so the answer is the initial cost of an asset takes into account all of the costs associated with its purchase and use. The purchase price as well as commission, transportation, appraisals, warranties, and installation and testing are all included in these expenditures. So in the company's chart of account and general ledger, the assets accounts are normally listed first. Asset accounts in the general ledger usually contain the debit balances. When the balance sheet is generated, the balances in certain of the asset account will be aggregated and presented as a single figure. Okay, so I will pass to the next patient, Shakira.
Okay. So the next question is question 5. We in June 2019. It's the same question with the previous group, but I will answer differently. So, two major qualitative characteristics of financial information in the International Standard Board framework are reliability and relevance. With the reliability, the main component is faithful representation. Discuss the meaning of relevance and faithful representation. So, this is based on my answer and a bit from the revised conceptual framework 2018. The meaning of relevant based on the conceptual framework that relevant financial information is capable of making a difference in the decisions made by the users. So as a financial information is capable of making a difference in decision, it will have a predictive value or confirmatory value or both. Then we have a factful representation. From IASB, factful representation means representation of the substance of an economic phenomenon instead of representation of its legal form only. So it also has been applied to seek the underlying characteristic of completeness, neutrality, and freedom from error. So this is the question about Question 2A, December 2019 from your ATM paper. This is a question about the current cost. Statement may be presented as an alternative to the main financial statement, compare replacing the historical cost report. However, the current cost accounting measurement system has still not been widely adopted in many countries that have attempted to implement it. Discuss to the merits of current cost accounting. So the firstly is accounting cost. It takes time to accumulate current value information, which increases the cost and time associated with the production of financial statement. Secondly, the accuracy of information, as some current value information may be based less on facts and more on guesses or poorly founded estimates, which impacts the reliability of the financial statements in which this information is included. So that's all from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you Hannah dan juga Putri Balkis. English pun macam Putri Balkis dah lebih kurang. Okay. Bila saya teringat you punya topik ni, saya teringatkan saya punya SBR, Strategic Business Reporting, ACCA. Dan dia jawab. Okay. Tapi info-info yang you present ni semuanya boleh masuk dalam SBR, Strategic Business Reporting, SBR paper. Ya. Dan inilah info-info ini info-info yang sama juga lah yang aku belajar, yang you akan belajar kalau you ambil ACCA. Yang lain saya tak pasti sebab saya tak ambil lagi. ACCA ini sebab saya dah ambil. Ini adalah topik-topik SBR. SBR ya. Okay, actually saya sangat interested dengan the first round, your first slide ni yang presented by Hannah. Hannah, cuba you tengok you punya slide presentation ni almost perfect saya rasa. Almost perfect tu bermaksud saya boleh bagi 4.5.
Thank you, sir.
Cuba you kecilkan sikit dia punya slide tu. Okay, next. Dia benda macam ni kan. Maksudnya you make it simple. Macam ni dia cantik. Dia simple tapi you present lebih daripada apa yang ditulis kat sini. Macam ini saya dah faham dah apa maksud recognition tu. Di recognition pun sama. Macam slide macam ni dia macam dah more to professional punya slide. Dia yang part-part yang depan lah, yang hijau-hijau ni actually dah cantik. Cuma when kat yang ni dia dah tukar kan sebab student lain dia dah tukar dah. Lain sikit. Thank you Obama. Okay. So dia dah tukar dah. Yang ni nampak macam kurang sikit berbanding yang tadi tu. So bila dia jadi mix tu dia dah back to normal semula. Kalau you continue dengan yang slide yang pertama tu, yang hijau tu sampai habis, actually slide you dah okay. Okay. Yang ni tak ada apa-apa masalah. Cuma nanti boleh tak you share slide ni dekat WhatsApp status so that your friend pun boleh tengok jugalah. Okay, thank you. Okay, actually tak ada masalah besar. English pun okay, presentation pun okay. So Hana, quite good you punya presentation lah. Yang Najihah tu saya tak, Najihah pula. Siti Syakira tu saya tak berapa clear tadi. Mungkin saya punya line tak okay ataupun you punya line kurang. But okay, so far okay, good. Ada soalan tak daripada floor? Any question from the floor? Satu markah, satu soalan. Guys, kau sikit. Satu soalan, satu markah. Ada soalan? Soalan-soalan satu markah ni lah yang akan membezakan antara B dengan B plus you nanti. B plus dengan A minus you nanti. Kalau markah you 78, 68, bonus-bonus mark ni lah yang akan digunakan nanti. Okay, ada soalan? Tak ada ya? Okay. So back to slide, saya nak bagi markah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Pasal paper nanti you buat ni lah. Point-point tu senang saya nak bagi markah kat situ nanti. Untuk next presentation lah. The rest okay. Yang slide yang pertama ni okay. Yang first round ni okay. Okay. Yang ni saya bagi slide presentation saya bagi okay sikit lah 4.25 dan juga you punya presentation dengan Anis Siti Balkis dengan Hana you punya presentation okay. So you punya markah 8.5 over 10. Okay, 8.5 over 10 you punya markah you untuk kali ni. So you lead lah. So you lead. Sorry batuk dah. Ambil air. So you lead sekarang dengan 8.5 over 10. So keep it up. Continue dengan next round presentation pula ya. Kita rehat dulu. Saya nak cari air sekejap.
Thank you,
You
sir.
are welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Saya nak cari air. You are welcome. You are welcome. Kita ada satu presentation lagi last. Kita rehat dulu 5 hingga 10 minit. Maksimum 10 minit lah. Saya tunggu dulu. Kita rehat toilet break, minum air dulu. Saya nak cari air je. Okey, jom.
Dah boleh share ke sir?
Boleh.
Dah boleh start kan sir?
Boleh.
Okay. Sekejap sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum to Sir Amizi and fellow friends. Tonight, our group will be presenting on 2 chapters of conceptual framework and 1 past year accounting paper. The first topic to be present will be on the presentation and disclosure, and the second one regarding the concept of capital and capital maintenance. Before going further, I would like to first introduce my groupmate, which consists of only 2 members, who is me, myself, and Noriza Sabrina binti Muhammad Azhari, and Nili Atila binti Jailani. For chapter 7, there will be 4 subtopics that I will be discussed further, which are on the presentation and disclosure as communication tools, presentation and disclosure objectives and principles, classification of assets, liability, equity, income and expenses, and lastly, aggregation. To begin with, presentation and disclosure as communication tools is a reporting entity that communicates information about its asset, liability, equity, income, and expenses by presenting and disclosing information in its financial statement. Therefore, effective communication of information in financial statement makes that information more relevant and contributes to a faithful representation of an entity's asset, liability, equity, income, and expenses, where it also enhances the understandability and comparability of information in the financial statement. In this slide, I mentioned that effective communication of information in financial statements requires A. Focusing on presentation and disclosure objectives and principle rather than focusing on rules. B. Classifying information in a manner that groups similar items and separate with similar items. And C. Aggregating information in such a way that it is not obscured either by unnecessary detail or by excessive aggregation. Hence, in making decision about presentation and disclosure, it is important to consider whether the benefit provided to users of financial statements by presenting or disclosing particular information is likely to justify the cost of providing and using that information. Next. Moving on to the presentation and disclosure objectives and principles. To facilitate effective communication of information in financial statement when developing presentation and disclosure requirements and standards, is needed between A. Giving entities the flexibility to provide relevant information that faithfully represent the entity's asset, liabilities, equity, income, and expenses. Where B. Requiring information that is comparable both from the period to period for a reporting entity and in a single reporting period across entities. Presentation and disclosure objectives in standards support effective communication in financial statement, where such objective help entities to identify useful information and to decide on how to communicate that information in the most effective manner. Effective communication in financial statement is also supported by considering the following principle, which is A. The entity-specific information is more useful than standardized description or sometimes referred to as boilerplate. And B. Duplication of information in different parts of this financial statement is usually unnecessary and can make financial statement less understandable. Next is classification. Classification indicates as a sorting of assets, liabilities, equity, income, or expenses on the basis of shared characteristic for presentation and disclosure purposes. Such characteristics include but are not limited to the nature of the item and its role within the business activities conducted by the entity and how it is measured. Going deeper into classification of assets and liabilities, classification is applied to the unit of account selected for an asset or liability. However, it may sometimes be appropriate to separate an asset or liability into components that have different characteristics and to classify those components separately to enhance the usefulness of the resulting financial information. For instance, it could be appropriate to separate an asset or liability into current and non-current components and to classify those components separately. And then next, similar refers to grouping the similar item. For example, non-current assets such as PPE, building, capitals, and others. Then what is meant by dissimilar is that to separate dissimilar items such as separate asset and liability into current and non-current components. And lastly, offsetting, that indicates where an entity recognizes and measures both an asset and liability as separate units of account, but groups them into a single net amount in the statement of financial position. For example, account receivable. For classification of equity, to provide useful information, it may be necessary to classify equity claims separately if those equity claims have different characteristics. Similarly, to provide useful information, it may be necessary to classify components of equity separately if some of those components are subject to particular legal, regulatory, or other requirements. To illustrate, in some jurisdictions, an entity is permitted to make distributions to holder of equity claims only if the entity has sufficient reserve specified as distributable. Lastly, classification of income and expenses is applied to A, an income and expenses resulting from the unit of account selected for an asset or liability, or B, components of such income and expenses if those components have different characteristics and are identified separately. For instance, a change in the current value of an asset can include the effects of value changes and the accrual of interest to enhance the usefulness of the resulting financial information. Under profit or loss and other comprehensive income, income and expenses are classified and included as either in the statement of profit or loss or outside the statement of profit or loss in other comprehensive income. Next. Many users of financial statement incorporate that the total in their analysis either as a starting point for their analysis or as the main indicator of the entity's financial performance for the period. Because the statement of profit or loss in the primary source of information about the entity's financial performance for the period, all income and expenses are in principle included in the. However, in developing standard, the board may decide in exceptional circumstances that income or expenses arising from a change in the current value of an asset or liability are to be included in other comprehensive income. This is because when doing so would result in the statement of profit or loss, providing more relevant information or providing a more faithful representation of the entity's financial performance for that period. In principal income, income and expenses included in other comprehensive income in one period are reclassified from other comprehensive income into the statement of profit or loss in a future period. However, for instance, if there is no clear basis for identifying the period in which reclassification would have yet result or the amount that should be reclassified, the board may, in developing standard, decide that income and expenses included in other comprehensive income are not to be subsequently reclassified. That would be all from me, and I will pass the floor to Nili Atila for further discussion on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Next, I will continue to discuss chapter 7 and 8 of the conceptual frameworks. First and foremost, what is aggregation? Aggregation is the adding together the details such as asset, liabilities, equity, income, or expenses that have shared characteristics and are included in the same classification. Aggregation makes information more useful by summarizing a large volume of detail. However, aggregation conceals some of that detail. Hence, a balance needs to be found so that relevant information is not obscure either by a large amount of insignificant detail or by excessive aggregation. Not only that, but different level of aggregation may also be needed in different parts of the financial statements. For example, typically, the statement of financial position and the statement of the financial performance provide summarized information, and more detailed information is provided in the notes. So in chapter 8, I will present about the concept of capital maintenance, and determination of profit, and lastly, the capital maintenance adjustment. A financial concept of capital is adopted by most entities in preparing their financial statements. There are two concepts of capital, which are financial concept of capital and physical concept of capital. The selection of the appropriate concept of capital is by an entity should be based on the needs of the user of its financial statement. Thus, a financial concept of capital should be adopted if the user of the financial statement are primarily concerned with the maintenance of nominal invested capital or the purchasing power of the invested capital. However, if the main concern of user is with the operating capability of the entity, a physical concept of capital should be used. The concept chosen indicates the goal to be attained in the determining profit, even though there may be some measurement difficulty in making the concept operational. Moving on, a financial concept of capital is adopted by most entities in preparing their financial statement. The example of financial concept of capital is the invested money or invested purchasing power. Capital is synonymous with the net assets or equity of the entity. The next concept of capital is the physical concept of capital. If the main concern of user is with the operating capability of the entity, a physical concept of capital should be used. For example, the operating capability. The capability is regarded as the productive capacity of the entity based on such as the units of output per day. The next subtopic under chapter 8 is the concept of capital maintenance and the determination of profit. Under the concept of financial capital maintenance, the profit is earned only if the amount of the net asset at the end of the period exceeds the amount of the net asset at the beginning of the period, after excluding any distributions to and contribution from owner during the period. Furthermore, financial capital maintenance can be measured in either nominal monetary units or units of constant purchasing power. Compared to the financial capital maintenance, the physical capital maintenance in the compared to the financial capital maintenance, the physical maintenance earn the profit only if the physical productive capacity of the entity at the end of the period exceeds by the physical productive capacity at the beginning of the period, after excluding any distributions to and contribution from owners during the period. Moving on, the concept of capital maintenance is concerned with how an entity defines the capital that it seeks to maintain. Furthermore, it provides the linkage between the concept of capital and the concept of profit because it provides the point of reference by which profit is measured. The principal difference between the two concepts of capital maintenance is the treatment of the effect of changes in the prices of assets and liabilities of the entity. In general, an entity has maintained its capital if it has much capital at the end of the period as it had at the beginning of the period. And any amount over and above the required to maintain the capital at the beginning of the period is called profit. Lastly, the selection of the measurement basis and concept of capital maintenance will determine the accounting model used in the preparation of the financial statement. Next, I will discuss about the physical capital maintenance. The physical capital maintenance concept requires the adoption of the current cost basis of measurement. Second, under the concept of physical capital maintenance, the capital is defined in terms of the physical productive capacity. Profit represents the increase in that capital over the period. And all price changes affecting the asset and liability of the entity are viewed as changes in the measurement of the physical productive capacity of the entity. Hence, that is why they are treated as capital maintenance adjustment that are part of equity and not as profit. Next is the financial capital maintenance concept. This concept does not require the use of a particular basis of measurement. Under the concept of financial capital maintenance, the capital is defined in terms of nominal monetary unit. Profit represents the increase in nominal money capital over the period. Therefore, increases in the prices of assets held over the period conventionally referred to as holding gains and basically profits. So the last topic for chapter 8 is capital maintenance adjustment. The revaluation of or restatement of asset and liabilities give rise to increase or decreases in equity. While these increases or decreases meet the definition of income and expenses, they are not included in the statement in the income statement under the certain concept of capital maintenance. It is included in the equity as capital maintenance adjustment or revaluation reserve. Next, we will proceed with the past year paper. I will pass back to Izzah Sabina. Thank you, Nelia Atila. For the past year paper, we could only find question on topic 8 regarding the concept of capital and capital maintenance. The question chosen was extracted from June 2015, question 2A, that stated in current cost accounting, there are two fundamentals and competing views on what constitute beginning and ending capital, the financial concept and the physical concept, by Godfrey et al. The question asks us to explain on the main difference between the concept of financial capital and physical capital, where it consists of 5 marks. Nelly will continue with the answer. In this slide, it shows you the point to answer the question. For firstly, the difference between the financial capital and physical capital is how it is defined. Financial capital is defined in terms of nominal monetary units. Profit represents the increase in nominal money capital over the period, while physical capital, it is defined in terms of physical productive capacity. Next, how they earn the profit. For financial capital, the profit is only earned if the net asset at the end of the period exceeds the net asset at the beginning of the period. Compared to physical capital, the profit is earned if the physical productive capacity of the entity at the end of the period exceeds the physical productive capacity of the entity at the beginning of the period. So the last point is how it is measured. Financial capital does not require the use of particular basis of measurement, while physical capital, it requires the adoption of the current cost basis of measurement. That's all from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you Izzah dengan Naili. Okay, saya pun tak adalah berapa faham sepenuhnya topik 8 ni. Sorry. Jangan saya share saya pun. Okay, this one the original. So ini jarang sangat kita gunakan dekat mana-mana lah. Sebab kita buat account pun kita tak nampak kat mana capital tu. Tapi kalau based on kita punya 8.1 dan 8.2 ni dengan dia punya 8.3.4 ni, kita boleh conclude that dekat sini ada tulis under a financial concept of capital such as invested money or invested purchasing power, capital is synonymous with the net asset or net equity of the entity. You boleh ambil these two key point dia. Okay. This one is financial. Okay. Under a physical concept of capital, okay, ni contohnya operating capability. So you tak boleh nampak pun, you tak boleh measure pun benda tu. Tapi ini kamus accounting kan. Kalau orang cerita apa itu capital apa itu capital? Capital tu kalau dalam you punya SOFP, Statement of Financial Position, you ada share capital. Share capital tu is financial punya capital lah. Share yang kita boleh measure dia. Share capital, share premium, itu share capital. Yang tak nampak tu yang mana macam ni lah. So ada physical dengan ada financial. Kita selalu sebutkan capital you apa? Apa capital? Capital tu apa? Definition capital tu inilah definition capital. Kamus kita. Tapi kita jarang orang tanya apa itu capital kan. Kalau dia orang tanya apa itu capital, share capital. So bila nak pecahkan in detail, okay. Capital ni terbahagi kepada dua. Financial capital dengan physical capital. Financial capital, dia cakap contohnya ialah net asset, net equity. Net asset ni dia akan jadi net total asset. Net total asset dia akan jadi non-current asset tambah non-current liability. Kalau you macam confuse nanti you jawab macam tu je. Ini basic lah, basic understanding. Supaya takut you macam ni apa pula chapter 8 ni. Untuk physical concept ni, physical concept ini ada bagi contoh kan, such as operating capability. Capital based on production capability. Contohnya dia kata physical ni maksudnya unit of output per day. Berapa kuantiti produk yang kita jual satu hari. Ada physical capital. Capital tu aset kita lah. Contohnya aset kan. Berapa hari ni contohnya ni macam based on inventory. Berapa inventory banyak mana yang keluar hari ini. Itu physical kita punya capital. Maksudnya untuk kita buat business tu kita perlukan barang untuk dijual. Barang untuk dijual tu current asset lah. Inventory kan. Itu capital kita, modal kita hari ni. Kalau kita nak start, contohnya untuk business hari ini, kita nak keluarkan berapa kita punya capital in terms of physical capital based on kita punya dictionary ni. Dia macam agak tak faham sangat pun. Saya rasa you tak berapa faham topik yang chapter 8 ni. Tapi dia itu based on yang tu. So soalan pun dia tak akan tanyalah in detail yang suruh you faham, suruh you betul-betul faham tentang apa itu financial capital, capital maintenance, apa semua tu tak ada. So saya tak akan bagi soalan yang chapter 8 ni lah. So yang penting chapter 1, 2, 3 recognition, apa itu asset, liability, equity, macam tu. Okay, tak apa. Kalau macam still ni, nanti kita akan tengok balik soalan-soalan pasir paper. So nanti you punya next assignment ialah you prepare seorang akan ambil satu pasir paper and then you akan prepare dalam slide presentation. From time to time you tengok. Kalau macam soalan Naili ni, okay, saya dah tutup cuba Naili, saya share balik yang tadi ada, saya dah buka tadi. Macam yang grup ni, soalan dia nanti dia akan keluar macam yang belakang sini. Dia tak tanya in detail, apa itu, apa ini, apa itu in detail. Ni 5 markah. Okay, explain the main difference between financial capital and physical capital. So different dia ialah based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 contoh ya. Yang financial capital does not require the use of a particular basis of measurement. Kalau physical require adoption of current cost basis of measurement. Ni dia dah simplify dah. Dia punya ni. Definition dia kalau kita nak cakap pasal financial punya capital yang kita ada ni, in terms of monetary value, based on duit yang kita ada. Kalau physical, based on kita punya apa-apa yang produk, contohnya productive capability ke capacity ke apa-apa yang berkaitan. Yang ni you boleh relate dengan management accounting, yang atas ni you boleh relate dengan financial accounting. Itu bahasa yang mudah lah untuk difahami. Kalau tak faham lagi, you boleh Google lagi. Pula ada contoh-contoh yang you lebih faham lah. Which one is physical, financial, capital. Sekarang dunia penuh dengan Mr. Google. So you say, biasa tengok image lah. Aku ada hal ni physical. Ini contoh kan. Ni mungkin you boleh ambil lah. Contoh saya nampak tak kan. Physical capital versus financial capital. Macam ni boleh you cuba faham. Physical, machine, factory, office, building. Financial, equity, stock. Ni boleh you ambil sebagai contoh. Tak faham lagi, cari lagi yang lain. Physical capital is a tools, instrument, machine, building. Financial is a fund. Ni pun boleh juga. Physical capital and financial capital. Kalau tak faham lagi kan, ada banyak lagi ni. So yang tadi based on kamus, ini based on yang ayat simple-simple you boleh cari. Okay. Tak faham, kalau tak faham, yang ni lagi faham, senang. Dia bagi contoh siap-siap dia ni. Tools, instrument, machine, building dan lain-lain. Yang tadilah, yang contoh yang tadi ni. Ni tadi. Sumpah dia. Pula dulu. Maksudnya kalau yang this group you boleh ambil je, you crop yang situ tu letak kat chapter 8 ni. Baru faham dengan contohnya sekali. Sebab ni semua teori kan. Bukan soalan tadi. Soalan ni. Kotak 1, 2, 3, kotak keempat tu you bagi contoh terus. Copy contoh tu masuk sini. Does not require the use of a particular basis of measurement financial. Yang ni boleh guna. Okey, macam mana nak apa cost basis untuk tools, machinery, apa lagi sini tadi. Saya suka yang ni, machine, factory, office building. Yang ni tak perlu ada measurement sebab dia memang dah duit kan, cash. Macam tu. Ni banyak lagi lah, dia beri contoh-contoh lain ni. Physical, financial, bond, corporate stock, truck, computer, building dan lain-lain. Tak faham lagi, cari lagi kat sini. Banyak lagi ni. Physical capital, human, ni ada human capital. Dia bertambah sini ya. Tapi saya rasa you all tak nampak kan slide saya tadi? Ya Saya dah pangkal. Nampak tak ini? Yang saya cerita tadi. Okay. Physical, nampak tak slide saya ni? Ni, Google.
Nampak, sir.
Okay, physical, machine, factory, office building, financial fund used to purchase or rent physical, equity, stock, share, loan, bond. Ini contoh-contoh yang kalau you nak faham sedikit lah. Sebab benda-benda macam ni kalau tak bagi contoh, macam saya pun kadang-kadang tak faham juga. Okay, ada soalan lain? Sebelum kita end kita punya kelas today. Okay, ini markah ada soalan? Okay, kalau tak ada soalan, saya bagi markah. Presentation yang tadi is better, tetapi yang ni nampak macam menarik bila ada color-color biru ni. Not bad, okay. Ni professional macam Aisyah tadi. Macam Aisyah dengan Asrul. Cuma bila yang part-part yang berjela-jela ni saya pun dah confuse satu. So nanti better you buat dalam point form. Sebab teori kan. Teori ni kena point form. Kalau ayat panjang ni terus saya tak faham. Sebab kita nak dengar presentation kan. Nak baca, lepas tu tak ada dia tak ada bold. Dia tak ada color lain, key point ni. Jadi next time you kena ada bold, key point, color lain. Buat perenggan, buat kotak, buat graf, buat chart, macam tu. Kadang-kadang saya pun tak buat juga sebenarnya. Tapi cuba, kita cuba buat yang ni. Sebab ni teori punya subjek ni kan. Okey, untuk presentation ni dia lebih kurang Aisyah, lebih kurang tim yang lain juga. So yang ni pun saya akan bagi 8/10 juga. 4 juga. So slide dia professional lah macam Aisyah juga, sama. Presentation pun lebih kurang itu juga. So markah dia 8 juga. Yang ni je yang terlebih sikit tadi, 8.5. So ni 4, ini pun 4 juga. Okay, YouTube video, G Drive slide, G Drive video. Jadi kena submit lah kat sini. So kita settle 4 grup hari ini. Esok malam kita akan buat 2 lagi. Yang ni. Esok malam 2 lagi. Lepas tu 2 kali lagi kelas. And then kita akan ke bulan puasa. Jadi saya nak plan untuk tukar ni 5 Ramadan ni dengan 3 Syawal ni. Kita punya kelas ganti. Macam ni saya prefer sebelum Ramadan lah kita ganti kelas. Jadi hari ni dah 17. Mungkin kita buat 2 round presentation kita. Maksud sebelum puasa tu ada 3 round presentation. 3 round lah, tajuk tak apa. Nanti saya cari balik slide senior you untuk you adaptasikan dia, untuk you cedok, imitate semua tu. At least you faham, okay sebenarnya nak buat macam ni. Senior dah ada contoh slide sini lah. Okay. Kita jumpa esok malam. Pukul 8 malam seperti biasa di Microsoft Teams. Nak tanya soalan. Okey, soalan.
Kan macam kalau present guna video yang upload kat YouTube tu guna video tu je boleh kan?
Boleh, senang. 2 in 1. You menyelam sambil minum air. You buat serentak sekaligus pun tak apa. Tak ada masalah.
Thank you, sir.
Maksudnya you buat YouTube video siap-siap and then you tunjuk dia dalam kelas, as long as suara clear, voice clear, semua clear. Settle, tak ada masalah. So simple je. Slide pun macam mana?
Saya habiskan.
Tak ada, itulah video tu macam video dalam YouTube and then you tunjukkan dia semula dalam kelas 30 minit maksimum. Slide tu slide biasa je lah. Lepas tu you share dalam WhatsApp lah sekarang, boleh share dalam WhatsApp sebelum presentation. Masuk dalam saya punya G Drive.
Okay. Lepas tu YouTube video tu hari tu sekata nak link, perlu bagi melalui apa?
Share link dalam WhatsApp group. Share link dalam WhatsApp group. Bila you dah masuk dalam YouTube channel you, bagi saya link dengan dalam WhatsApp group. Link dia.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Itu saja. So video you dah bagi saya, nanti saya akan masukkan dalam saya punya YouTube channel saya untuk you punya dan juga junior you. Dan slide presentation pun mungkin saya berfikir mungkin you kena baiki sebab nanti junior you nak guna lagi slide presentation you. Sama macam saya bagi slide presentation senior kepada you. Sebab dia subjek teori, kadang-kadang you tak faham. Kena perlukan bantuan untuk memahaminya. Okay, till we meet again tomorrow at 8 PM. See you then. Bye-bye. Assalamualaikum. Ada soalan nanti sambung dekat WhatsApp dengan esok. Jumpa.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. See you then. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.